And LinkedIn verse. I know this goes out to other places after, but we go live on LinkedIn. So hello, LinkedIn. It's good to see you again. We are super excited for this week's episode. Welcome back to another spicy episode of the Cyber Queens. I'm rather excited. This one, navigating layoffs in tech and in cyber and kind of in general. This is really going to apply to just about anyone who's been laid off. The high road or the hard truth. This was such a fun one because you guys probably don't know this, but Stacy and I text just about every day. We text or we Slack or both just about every day. And, as partners and besties will do. And I came across this post, the post that we've all probably seen, the post that you all know that I'm talking about, from a former Okta employee who got laid off, just doxing the absolute shit out of this company. And I was like, bro, did you see this? And Stacy was like, yeah. And I was like, I was kind of like, I read the post and my initial reaction was, what an idiot, because who would do that? Now, that does not kind of make you like look like bad for rehire, but everyone in the comments was loving it. They were commending this person and building them up. And I was just like, oh my God, the response, the public response is positive. This is bananas. And I was like, should we talk about this on an episode?
And I agreed. We should talk about it. So today we're going to talk about it.
I was like, what would you do? Anyway, so here we are. We're going to go into it.
Yeah, well, I also wear many different hats in regards to my perspectives of this because, a lot of my focus in my career so far has been on insider risk management. And, insider risk at times includes the PR of situations like this. So anyways, we're going to get into it today. And just to kind of set the stage here, we're not even 2 months into 2024. And, companies that we all know and recognize and even use as vendors have experienced layoffs. Both Proofpoint and Okta have both done layoffs. And that wraps up into other cybersecurity companies that we've seen over the past 2 years that have also cut staff, like Splunk, Zscaler, Rapid7, to name a few. And then
you have Discord who laid off their whole cybersecurity department. They're like, we're just going to outsource that. We don't need that in-house anymore.
Yeah, I think, or Discord, someone like that, and even to Patreon. Patreon was another one that was like, we're gonna get rid of all the people on the security team, and the way it was kind of presented in the press was that it's okay because how it sounds to me, it's like it's okay because the developers are focused on security, as if there's no need for any additional help, guidance, oversight of our developers to ensure that they are, building and coding securely.
Well, that, and no one's doing DevSecOps like really greatly, I would say. A lot of people who know it's important have integrated it, but I wouldn't say these things are doing well. And if you don't have security folks to advise them on how to do it well, how are they doing it well? It's just like, make your own DevSecOps today.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is just like this huge change from what I think people were expecting when the initial progressive like snowball of layoffs began to take shape. And there was this kind of false sense of security among our cybersecurity community that our roles are too important, our teams are too understaffed, and quite frankly, companies would be stupid to cut security, especially with the increasing regulation. So, like, hello, SEC. Where I stand now, it's like, sorry to break it to you, but your role, our roles, Meryl and I's roles, we're both still doing this full time. Our roles are just as much at risk as else's in any given company. And that's really because, what we're seeing is that CEOs are they're not operating rationally. And if they were, let's be honest, the return to office type push that we're seeing right now, it wouldn't be happening, and neither would these layoffs, because layoffs are really that short-term decision for a short-term gain. And unfortunately, the way that our regulations are around labor and working and everything, companies in the US can get away with it. So it really does no good for any of us in cybersecurity to operate in a denial state that a layoff can't happen to us.
No, it definitely can. And a lot of people think, well, my vertical is safe. I'm protected. Da da da. You're probably only safe if you're like that one guy maintaining a legacy like AS400 somewhere that we absolutely need to keep prod working. And as soon as the digital transformation happens at your company, your job is gone too. I was actually talking about this on a Purple Team meetup with the folks from like Meta and Lacework and Splunk the other day. We were saying like, in security, there's so much pressure on us to perform, and we're a new niche, right? Purple Teamers are. So like, we often come in and we want to establish a new program, and like within 4 or 5 months, if they don't see good ROI on that program, they're like, we're just going to nix this whole thing. That was a bad idea. And it's like, no, it's just that homegrown things take time to build up, and we need a longer ramp than that to like prove the ROI of this thing. But like in security, it's a fast-paced environment. If you don't have what it takes to keep up, you will be eliminated. I don't care if you're a hacker. I don't care if you're the CISO. You could be off. You could be outsourced at this point.
Yeah. Or, it could be something else different entirely, right? We're gonna hopefully get the chance to explore on a future episode, but the idea of layoffs potentially being a guise for other sorts of discrimination too. So I don't want to just gloss over that either as a potential factor, right?
Right.
How you are getting along within the ecosystem of your teams and whatnot can very, very well influence a decision to lay you off at the time that a company is doing broader layoffs. So,
Right.
but to kind of like put my coaching hat on for a minute and like pull out the
Stacey
woo
is our
woo.
certified. Stacey is our certified coach, by the way. She is our coach extraordinaire.
Yeah, and so in this coach training program that I'm in the process of finishing it up. So I'm not technically certified yet, but I can tell you I am putting in a lot of work and a lot of hours to get this thing done. This is like a 10 month to a year long training program with lots of steps, which is, the more and more that I get involved in it, the more that I just think it's so important, because the reality is, and this is like, another topic for another day, but like the coaching industry isn't regulated. Anyone can call themselves a coach, but the reality is like the stuff that we do, the techniques we use and everything, like there is such a incredible importance in knowing and learning how to do it right and effectively and safely, and where the boundaries are of coaching versus other areas like therapy or whatnot. So anyways, coach training program, one of our foundation principles is that life offers neither problems nor challenges, only opportunities. And what we mean by that is essentially that to cast judgment on a situation by looking at a layoff as bad or a problem can be really disempowering and distracting. And something that is really just hammered home in us as coaches is to lose that kind of judgment in situations and that gut instinct to classify something as good or bad or right or wrong. And I recognize that this is very counterintuitive to actually doing like security operations. And so maybe don't apply this mindset when you're reviewing security alerts, that the security alerts just are. But anyways,
They are. There are opportunities for improvement. No, but they are actual problems. Those are real problems sometimes. Sometimes life gives you real problems.
Yeah. So without opportunities in there, it's not life, right? Like opportunities really give us the experience of growth. And without situations like these, we say there would be no purpose to life. And really, that purpose can be found in everything that happens. And I know that is easier to say on the other side of a layoff than within it. As someone who has personally experienced a layoff, I, on the other side of it, do believe this, even though I will admit to you, full transparency, that I absolutely would not have believed it in the moment, right? So, with my personal layoff experience, like, and really everything that has happened to me throughout my cybersecurity career so far, really, it's like, if all of that is what I had to go through to be here today, be the founder of Hacker and Heels, acquire this incredible podcast, share the screen with the super impressive Meryl Vernon. Like, I'll take it. I am good with it. And so, like, hopefully, through our conversation today, one, just providing that little bit of assurance that you're in control of the situation when it happens, even though in the moment it may not feel like it. And we're going to talk about what your options are so that you can choose effectively how you want to proceed, and hopefully with a more informed backing than if you didn't listen to this episode at all.
Yeah. Layoffs are emotional things, right? It's like your job, and especially for those of us who are high achievers or those of us who work in tech tend to like really love our jobs. It's tied to your livelihood. It's tied to your sense of self-worth. So a layoff can be a highly emotional thing. And what Stacey's saying about opportunity and that mindset, that growth mindset, is going to come in later. Because, again, you can't give someone sage advice when they're in the middle of the emotional crap, but hindsight's always 2020. You can see how that was really better for me in the long term kind of thing. So let's talk about the spicy part of this episode. I'm going to drop some links in the comments, and those are links to 2 viral pieces of content. 1, the viral post from the former Okta employee. 2, a viral video of a woman named Brittany Peach who filmed her layoff from Cloudflare. She was an account executive, so she was kind of like in sales, like in the sales process. And these 2 things went viral because these people just said, you know what, I have nothing left to lose. Like, you slighted me, and I'm going to stick it to you. I'm going to stick it to you as best I can. And, we were kind of mixed feels on this. We were like, ooh, would you have done that? Was that a good move? I mean, it's spicy and bold, and I respect the hell out of them, but I don't know if I could do that, because I think from my point of view, I feel like future employers are going to look at that as like, ooh, now you're a risk, right? Like on the one hand, it's accountability, because if you treat someone who's going to tell people about it badly, then that's your incentive to treat them well. But on the other hand, it's like, are you just going to dox us every single time something makes you unhappy? And believe me, in security, we're unhappy a lot with the general goings on. So we addressed in the description, layoffs can happen because of a greater layoff. It could be like targeted laying off, kind of like someone commented how their spouse's return to office is being forced, but really it's just to weed out the people who won't be returning to office. It's like a suggested who should we lay off first kind of thing. Sometimes you get laid off from a toxic environment and you're super thrilled. You're like, you know what, you did me a favor. I was job hunting anyway. So, they're highly emotional, but immediate aftermath. What steps should we follow? What can we do in that emotional state to also remain practical for our future job search?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's certainly something that is best considered before you're in the moment than trying to figure out when you're in the moment. So a couple pieces of information that might be helpful for you. And above all, really the recommendation is to consult with an attorney if you are capable of doing so. We are not legal professionals. This is not legal advice. But there are people out there who are well trained, and also, these are things that like I've picked up through my own journey as well. So in 2023, this actually made news last year. The National Labor Relations Act ruled that employers can no longer silence laid off employees through their severance agreement. So just to kind of like back it up for a second. So usually what happens during a layoff is that you are offered a severance agreement. And basically, in the simplest of terms, it is we will pay you this money and you agree to not take legal action against us, not share any confidential secrets, like stuff like that, like a lot of reiteration of employment contract that you've already signed at the beginning, and so forth. And sometimes we'll also throw in potential health insurance coverage, paying for your portion of COBRA payments to keep your employer-sponsored healthcare for a longer period of time. You are entitled to keep your employer-sponsored health care for a period, a year or so, but whether or not you have to pay for some of it or if your employer will cover some of it, that kind of stuff can be worked into a severance agreement. And so that's one component of it. But the other component here that like I think is most important to the conversation we're having today and to the examples that Meryl has highlighted is that NDA or that non-disparagement portion. And so with NDAs as of 2023, and this is true retroactively as well, employers can no longer include a broadly written confidentiality clause that requires you to keep quiet about the terms of your severance agreement. And they can no longer include a broadly written non-disparagement clause that prohibits you from discussing the terms and conditions of your employment with third parties. And so all of this is focused on trying to protect what is called seven rights, which is the right to raise complaints about the employer to fellow coworkers, to a union, a board, or any like government agency, the media, or basically anyone else.
Yeah, now that's not talking about your NDA, like don't talk about our proprietary products or our IP or anything like that. Don't share, corporate intel with competitors. But when it comes to your separation and your severance, they are not allowed to tie silence to that. They're not allowed to make that a condition. So the people who did these things, I posted the video and the link in the comments, the people who did these things cannot be sued by these organizations for what they have said, because they haven't said anything slanderous. They haven't just said these people suck and they're doing all this, and like they're not just like making stuff up, but they're talking about their experience. They're keeping it pretty objective and like letting the facts speak for themselves, and that's okay. But choosing to take that route is a very interesting strategy, and you have to be really bold on your capabilities and your integral contributions to the team to take a route like that. I don't know, like and Maria brought something up. Maria Graham, who we've had on the show before, said she'd love to hear the perspective on if you're choosing to leave rather than being laid off. So if you're choosing to leave a toxic situation, same thing, hard truth or high road. Do we just say, I left for reasons that are mutual and thank you so much for the time and I'll be looking for my next opportunity? Or do you say, I left because this was bullshit? And don't be sucked in, because I feel like we kind of have a social responsibility, especially as women, to let others know where the toxic work environment is, and not just in dark social channels, right? Not just in like, let's have a conversation at a conference, but don't tell anyone I told you. Like I love people like you and like another friend of mine who speak very openly about their kind of contentious relationships with some former employers and how they stood up for themselves. So I'm like, thank you. Now I am wiser to that situation, whereas I might have gone for that opportunity before and I would have been miserable. So where does the shared responsibility model fall on our responsibility to others and, keeping it classy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, I want to make sure that I highlight one thing, because this is something I actually learned myself this morning while I was doing research for this episode, in that there is a certain exclusion with this guidance from the National Labor Relations Act, in that supervisors are kind of exempt from this. And so the NLRA defines supervisors as employees who exercise authority over other workers, and they use what's, quote, independent judgment. You are someone who hires, assigns, promotes, disciplines, or otherwise are responsible for performance managing others. You are likely not protected in this way for your Section 7 rights and stuff like that, which really kind of stood out to me, because I personally didn't know that before, and when I read that, I think to myself, well, this is lame, because now we only get to hear about conditions and perspectives from people who are individual contributors. Like we won't hear this stuff from anyone who essentially is a manager up. Where's the protections for them, right? Like their experience is also really important to get to hear about and to help us decide where it is safe and inclusive for us to work. So
word of caution to the supervisors out there.
Yeah. And so getting back to the question of like whether it is a layoff or whether it was, you're escaping a toxic workplace or whatnot, whether or not, like, let's just say, like, I personally would take, the high road or the hard truth. I would have different answers for you depending on which part of my career journey I am in. And so I will admit to honestly having done both.
That's
And
why we said both and neither. Here it is. We meant it.
yeah, so I have done both. I have been that person who I mean, I can say honestly, and this was pre 2023, so I had a workplace experience that was terrible. And at the end of it, the after moving across the country during a pandemic and negotiating my compensation package up almost like I think 40%. So like all the signs that like this company wanted me, like was invested and everything. 2.5 months later, they cut ties. And I was, beyond pissed, right? Like, who are you to have made me go through all of this stuff in the middle of a pandemic? Like, I had just bought a house and now you're cutting off my source of income as a, single woman professional at the time. And so when the severance agreement was in front of me with the NDA, with the non-disparagement, the confidentiality clause and everything, I said, nope, I don't need your money. You will not allow you to buy my silence. And so I didn't sign it. To this day, there is nothing on paper anywhere with my signature that, has me consenting to any of that. I also am not, what was probably like $40,000 richer that I could have had from that compensation. And in the moment, it was the right decision for me. And that's kind of like the main guy. Like, if you take one thing away from this entire conversation today, it's that whatever you decide, it's the right decision for you at that time, right? And so I wouldn't lose sleep at night worrying about it. But now, with what I've experienced since then, my perspective is different. My perspective is more so to focus on the positive. And I don't mean going and praising the company after they have laid you off or whatever.
Or force you to quit. Really, no, that's not okay.
Yeah, or
either.
Force you to quit, cut ties, whatever. My perspective is it is far more energetically valuable and useful for you and your time and your mental health to stay focused on the good things and what you can control, what you can do. In that, I would like, barring a situation where that you have a legal right to go after them for something, like let's say that you have experienced harassment, discrimination, whatnot. Like, I totally understand why you would choose not to sign an agreement of any sort, right? Because that is something that you give up with it. Within boundaries, right? There's also like, some exemptions where they can't actually prevent you if you sign that agreement from like going to the EOC and stuff like that. But like, my perspective these days is now like, take their money, take that company's money, take that money and go do something better with it than anything that they would have done with it. Go use that money to better yourself. Women, we always use a portion of that money to better our communities. Like, take it and don't lose sleep on the idea that it's going to affect, your life, your career, your future, whatever. Because again, while it may very much seem like it in the moment, like when it happened to me, it was almost like gaining entry to a secret club. Like, this is how I've described it to other people, where it was like the moment it happened to me and I told like the first person next to me, they were like, here's your membership card. Welcome to the club.
Oh, no.
Pull back the curtain. Here's all the people who have been wronged in this industry.
Just like
here's all the people
Raise
who have
your
been
hand
laid
if you
off,
two have been personally
fired.
victimized by the cyber industry.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we're recommending this advice judiciously, right? If some people, like if you're in the position Stacey was in and you can turn down the severance, like we've got Victoria in the comments who's in the same position, it was more worth it to her to have her voice and be able to speak freely and not have those limitations. But I brought this up to Stacey. I was like, man, though, like, okay, don't get me wrong. I'm a zillennial, right? So I grew up very Gen X, but I am technically a millennial. And like, I've never been laid off. Thank God. Please don't let it happen now. But if I had been, I feel like I would be so fired up and so mad behind the scenes, but I would I would take the high road. I would be so afraid. I would be like, thank you for the time. I learned so much, but I'm open to work. But like, I would want to not. I would want to burn it down. I would want to feel retribution. And I was like, do we let them get away with that? Do we let them just pay us the money and get away with it? And Stacey said something so insightful. She said, yes, and let me tell you why. First of all, like she said, the money will benefit you and your family in the long run. It'll fuel you while you're on your job search. You can do something better with that for you and your mentality with it. But also, you won't make a difference. You trying to stick it to them with your one LinkedIn post won't make a difference. Thousands of people are still going to apply to work at Okta. Thousands of people still work at Cloudflare and still love their jobs. And if they were asked to comment, they would say, yeah, we love our employer. Thank you so much for not laying me off with her. So, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you want them to feel it. You want them to feel how bad they did you, and to know that you are a person and not just a number, but you're not going to make a difference. You're not going to severely harm the organization. So it's more worth it to kind of take the money and run. Does that feel like selling out? Does it feel slimy? I would struggle with it, but I saw the sage in Stacey's advice.
I kind of compared it to like we're mosquito bites to them. And this process is just a built-in cost of doing business. It's baked into the foundation and the systems of how many of these monolithic corporations operate today.
Yeah.
And the reality, like, it's almost like an accepted and supported machine of how these companies work, right? Like, if there is someone who dissents, if there's someone who's not working with within keeping the line, whatever, then, just give them 20K and sign here and let them go. Right. Like that is just how they operate. And so while, this is huge for you, right? Like, look, we're not downplaying it. Like, our lives are so intertwined, especially in the United States, with our careers. It is literally our identities. It is how we have health insurance. It is how we keep a roof over our heads. Like,
I'm the sole income earner for my family. Like, my wife's industry was 10 times more toxic than anything I've seen in tech, which is horrendous. So, I'm the sole income earner for my family. Like, I can't just, I will take the moral high ground and say goodbye to my job tomorrow. Like, I would have to put up with a whole lot of toxicity to make that call.
Yeah. So we're definitely not downplaying that, but the reality is for them, for those employers, you're not going to have an impact. And please, like, in the comments, like, let me know if someone else has seen otherwise. But from what I've seen in the conversations I've had, like, my mentality has shifted to where, like, we just move on from that quick and we figure out where are the positive places to put our time, our talent, our energy, and continuing to support and lift up those companies and those places and those spaces and efforts as well.
Yeah, I think it comes down to knowing your values, knowing what your strategy is, knowing yourself best and what's best for yourself. If you're a single unattached person, you can fight these battles and it means a lot to you, then do it. But like I said, I'm a parent, I'm in a marriage, and I am the sole income earner, so I can't make decisions like that. But I've also never found myself in that situation. But there are effective ways to speak up and make a difference. There are things you can do in the aftermath to try to affect change, especially if you left a toxic situation, especially if while you were there, you observed things that didn't necessarily jive with you. There are positive things you can do. So we don't just want to leave you with, you won't make a difference, take the money and run, do with that what you will. We definitely want to give you something positive you can try and implement immediately if you find yourself in one of these situations in the near future. We so hope not. But if you do, we think speaking up in the right context is important. The role, like your industry networks, speaking to other people, you can mentor and advocate for change within our industry. And there's certain places and environments that will help you do that. One of them, someone tagged in a comment recently when you made that pregnancy layoff post. It was like the Speak Out Revolution, I think. Speak Out Revolution is all about like calling spotlights, but like legal and like gravity bringing spotlights to certain workplace issues and making sure that policies are changed and that cultures are held accountable. So that's a great place to go. You yourself can like, and I think Stacey did this in such a beautiful way. Stacey, during her layoff journey and, in job hunting and encountering frustrations with things people asked her to do in the application process or lack of response from prospective employers and things like that, she speaks objectively and she talks very really about how you asked me to do this, I completed it, you basically said thank you and took it and gave me nothing. Like that was not effective for me. That did not help me. And she keeps it very objective, but she does let people know what she thinks. She does kind of voice her truth, but she does it in an objective and kind of elevated manner. So that's always an avenue for you to raise public awareness, to not keep silent about those things that frustrate you with certain orgs and kind of shine, like make that signal to people, but not just be out here saying this org is trash and everyone who works there is trash and da-da-da. Because like Stacey said, the CEO of all these orgs, of Cloudflare and Okta and PayPal and places like that, they still sleep good at night. They don't care about you. Sadly.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your advice for effective ways to speak up?
Yeah, like really on the grassroots level, as an individual, when I share some of my past experiences, I try to keep it super objective and really focus on the situation and the outcome, right? And that's that it doesn't matter who I worked with or where I was at the time. That context particularly is irrelevant. What we're trying to do is kind of show a situation and how it's better and let the rest of the community comment and learn and share resources about how to do it differently, do it better the next time, right? Because some people might not realize that, like, what just happened was something that they do. Like, for instance, and this is kind of going out of layoffs now into like getting into interviewing and hiring or whatever, but like asking to complete some sort of like take home assignment. And so there's a lot of discussion and debate and reality around that can be really a really exclusive process, right? Like the requirement that you have of someone to take time outside of being able to provide for themselves and their family. They're probably already, they might be potentially working another job already, throughout this experience or whatnot, or being caregiving or whatever. Like, just so many barriers that you're setting up. And some oftentimes, I mean, I've yet to hear a story where someone has done a take-home project and they were like, "This is excellent, you're hired, like, welcome in." Like, it always, the story.
No, they like
always
solve my
ends,
problems for free.
yeah, and then they okay, so really like keeping it focused on the situation and the outcome, and not name calling or throwing the emotions and stuff like that in there, in a distracting kind of way. The other thing too is as Meryl mentioned, there are organizations out there who really are trying to push forward protections for employees in the US and beyond. And workplace abuse is one of them that I see a lot of, work around. They have this Workplace Psychological Safety Act, and they're really like a great organization that's lobbying for those protective legislation, policy, raising that public awareness about psychological harm at work, and really trying to identify and build leaders who campaign for that abuse-free workplace. Because as we said at the very beginning, like, this is traumatic, right? And like, while the layoff component is fact, the execution of it leaves a lot to be desired in a lot of these companies, and how they're actually like doing, like, what they're saying to people, how they're informing people, stuff like that. Like, there is a right way and a wrong way to do it, and there is an opening for people to do significant harm to one another in how this unfolds. And so having some protections around that, I think, would be very, very beneficial for all of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They're like, you have to keep, if you want your employees to act graceful after their exit, like, and especially if you're laying them off, then be graceful during their exit, right? Treat them like a human. Like in the video, Brittany asks why, what is the reason? What were the performance issues? I wasn't put on a PIP. I've been getting good feedback in all my one-to-ones. I don't understand how I haven't met expectations. And they couldn't tell her and they wouldn't tell her. And then they said, we'll get back to you. And she's like, can my manager be on this call? Does he even know? Like, they completely cut the manager out sometimes. Like, this decision was made for you. Thanks. Bye. So, it's always juicy and dicey. Another one of those orgs Stacy listed in the notes for us is can't buy my silence, which ends the misuse of the NDAs to buy victim silence. So if you're in that place to be able to advocate for yourself, that's a great thing. And then a special org that's very close and near and dear to my heart that my friends George Kamid, Carlos Guerrero, and Maria Graham, who's here in the comments with us today, started, Mind Over Cyber. If you find yourself in a situation you'd like to leave, or you're kind of seeing the writing on the wall, or you're afraid, or you're just, you're in that burnout suck, you're in any kind of suck, they started Mind Over Cyber, which is coming to major InfoSec events around the country, first of all at RSA. And that's going to teach accessible and portable mindfulness techniques for cybersecurity professionals so that we don't get to the place where if we are laid off or we do encounter something detrimental or we get bad feedback, that we're in a place of self-harm and thinking down on ourselves and poor mindset, because that will affect everything that we think and do. And so to speak on that, we've actually got a surprise guest cameo today. I think it's going to work out. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to make this happen. We are going to bring on someone who is also a good friend of mine, Mimi Gross, the cybersecurity matchmaker, because oftentimes when folks are laid off, she is one of their first phone calls, and rightfully so. So in bringing that mindfulness and that empowerment and taking your power back in your mind, in your job search, or if you are laid off or in things like that, we've got Mimi here to weigh in on the issue. Hello, Mimi from the DC Archives.
From the National
Mimi.
Gallery Archives, yes. I found the quietest spot I could possibly find. So if it's really loud and really bad, we'll just be short. How is the sound? And see, I had a beautiful statue waiting for you guys to view.
It's great. I love it. Thank you for the little bit of culture in my morning. Otherwise, I would get none because I'm about to dive into Excel hell after this. So
exactly. It's
Mimi,
a nice contrast with the neon, right? It's classic,
yes. So
modern.
What is your advice for people moving forward positively in their job search or in the aftermath of a layoff or anything like that?
So I was listening to all the comments, the discussion, and it is so interesting because it does feel so badass when somebody does that and like speaks their truth on the way out, and you feel that natural like compassion and connection and appreciation, for somebody doing that, right? But I guess, since I've been speaking with hundreds of people over the past few years who do get laid off, it really does end up being like what you said. It's not just mosquitoes. It's actually more like a keto, if you think about it. So when you're laid off, you're given tremendous power, and there are lots of people who feel bad about that. So one of the first things I do when someone calls me, and I say, did you ask for a LinkedIn recommendation? Because that is one of the most valuable things you can have. It's gold. If you take a look at my recommendations on my LinkedIn, they are my prized possessions of my entire career. And that is one of the most amazing things to get right away. And you do give that up with that badass exit. So there's a lot of things that can represent as a little microcosm of all of that, a keto vibe. Like, you're laid off. That's rough. That's a lot. You're getting a lot of energy at you. And then to throw it back is actually giving away some energy. And I don't think people think about that.
Yeah, it's definitely, like we said, it's emotional. That's so great. If they are laying you off and saying it's not on you, or it's this or it's that, say, okay, great. Then give me a recommendation. Help me get my next job. Help me.
Like today, right now, while you feel the worst.
Yes. While you feel bad. And if they don't feel bad, that's a horrible org. Dox them,
right.
No kidding.
Okay.
Don't take
Well,
Neil's advice.
If they don't feel bad, the second question I always ask is, did they take care of you? Were they okay in this process? And so I can tell you that I have heard in the past few months, I know which companies are not treating people well, and I know which companies are. And that's another thing I wanted to share is sometimes the power of third-party networking on behind the scenes can be more powerful than sometimes that I do believe it to be a little bit of a loss of power when you go public with something. like that. I don't know, like to what you were saying. Like, I don't know how much you're actually getting out of that, and how much are you giving versus how much you're getting from that. So, what I would say is, like, in the cybersecurity marketing society, especially, like, you can't get away with doing a bad layoff and then think that you're going to be able to hire another cybersecurity marketer. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody kind of knows, and people are friends with each other, and you talk to your friends, and word gets around. So companies should be on notice that, yes, legally, whatever, but a lot of people get freaked out by non-disparagements, and they don't want to lose anything, no matter, they don't want to, like, get close to the legalese, right? So they'll stay far. But, like, with personal interactions, they're not traceable, and companies should be on notice that people do talk, and word will get around that you're not a healthy, safe place to be. So I just wanted to throw that out. I think that's important to know,
Yeah, I do. We do appreciate that. And we are going to have Mimi back next week. She's going to be our special guest next week, next Friday, to talk about the actionable ways you can make the most out of your layoff period, right? How to seize the layoff, how to show up, how to make sure you are getting good personal ROI on your actions. And in that vein, Mimi, so we're going to move into final takeaways. I would love for your takeaway to be, because we were talking about mindset and how layoffs can affect your mindset, can affect your energy, can affect your sense of self-worth. And that is especially rough place to be in if you're trying to find a new job. You just got laid off and you need a new job and you feel like crap about yourself. Like, how do we adjust that and show up with our best energy?
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing, because I also work on the hiring strategist side. I am a matchmaker, so I work both sides of the game trying to make everybody happy. What I'm hearing on the hiring manager side is that people who look amazing on paper are showing up to interviews a mess. And we cannot have that. I mean, you got to bring your best self there. So, if you want to give yourself some time to grieve and, like, just take some space to, like, don't get out of your pajamas for a couple days and do whatever you do when you're not doing well, fine. But after a few days, you have to get up. You got to get up and get that empowered job search vibe going, because that is ruining it for a lot of people. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But that is kind of my takeaway, is that, unfortunately, it's tough love time. You got to find a way to feel good about yourself. And so I have a few tips for that. I've, obviously been coaching some people through that. But the most important thing is that you truly are doing self-care. And that doesn't mean like a manicure or a massage. Self-care really means feeling like you remember what you do well and feeling some little senses of accomplishment. One of the things I did in my transition, which everybody knows and is sick of already, but I started sourdough when I transitioned into the marketing society from recruiting. And sourdough is this amazing thing, because it's like a little bit of time every day, but, like, you feel this tremendous sense of accomplishment. And it's not a little thing. I really recommend, if you get out for a run, you're going to come back to an interview an hour later, you're going to be a different person. So I know it sounds a little self-helpy or whatever it is, but it's one of those times where it's like, now's the time. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the takeaway, but I have more on that. The empowered job search is what
we have more. We're going to go in depth into all the things next week. So if you have questions for Mimi, make sure you DM them to us, comment them here, get them to us, all about how to seize that layoff and how to do well. Mimi, thank you so much for taking time out of your family vacation to speak to us this Friday.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for tolerating. I hope the sound was okay and you got a little bit of art in, right?
Oh, it's fine. So, the listeners can put up with it for a second. So we'll see you back next week.
Next week, anybody who does register for the show next week, I'm going to be sending out after the show a 15-minute free LinkedIn audit. So we can really get a lot to, you get that first impression that hiring managers are getting when they see your LinkedIn. And a lot of people have found it extremely helpful. So we're going to offer that to anyone who shows up next week. And I can't wait. Thanks for having me today. This was really crazy and fun.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank your children for me. Tell them
Mimi.
I appreciate them. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So we will drop that link in the chat, in the comments for you as well. Mimi is offering free 15-minute LinkedIn audits for anybody who hears this episode now or later, which is always helpful, because that's the proactive part of we might get laid off, or we might not, or we might just be looking for a promotion. Stacey, your takeaway.
Yeah, my takeaway is I'm going to leave you with another one of my coaching woo-woo foundation principles, which is so pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And what I mean by this is that our experience as humans, our experience through a layoff process and whatnot, like it's inevitably going to hurt. It is going to feel painful. I would be lying if I didn't say that I spent evenings in my bed crying uncontrollably, worried about like my life, my future, and if this was the end of it all, right? But the reality is that we do have a choice in how we view and process and react to that pain. We have a choice as to how much we let that pain or let that company affect us mentally, emotionally, and in our actions and in our words. And so you might choose in the moment to, be Britney or with the Cloudflare situation, or be like that Okta guy or whatever, or be like one of my favorites. And I gotta slip this in here before we close out, is to go look up. There's a guy, his name is Isaac. I'm blanking on Isaac's last name, but he got laid off from Compass. And this will be so easy for you to find.
Someone find Mystery Isaac from the Compass.
He put on a pink wig, poured himself a glass of wine, and just made everybody on that call laugh. Oh yeah, I think I had posted about it earlier on LinkedIn today. Like he just went in there with the mindset of like, this sucks, and I'm gonna try to make it as enjoyable for everybody as possible. So as I had said earlier, whatever you decide, that decision is going to be right for you. But know that, again, you have a decision to make, and you have the power to make it yourself. It's not something that is, other sorts of like bias and other systemic type things. Like it's your choice in whether you let it get to you and how you react to it, or whether you're going to use it as an opportunity to, just catapult yourself to new heights, which honestly, in every negative situation that I've had in my cybersecurity career, even though again, in the moment, it feels terrible, I always look back on it and can say that like, that sucked, but I grew so much from it. And it's going to be the same thing for you all if you go through it.
I say the same thing to myself when I'm in the gym doing shit that sucks, but I know it's good for me. Anyway, no, layoffs aren't good for anybody. And that was just a joke. So my takeaway is going to be that I've been on a little bit of a mindfulness journey lately with the help of my You Can't Sit With Us crew. So that's Danny Wolf, George Kamid, Carlos Guerrero, and Maria Graham. Love y'all. You can't sit with us. And I just got to say that I find myself controlling my own emotions better. So I find that like, I'm not triggered to certain reactions anymore that I used to be. I'm able to step back. And one of the pieces of advice I give to mentees who like receive harsh feedback or feel inadequate in their job performance, or are like have jobs, but they're down about them, I say it's so hard, but try to separate the emotionality from the job performance. Like jobs, like Stacey said, is such a big part of who we are. And I love my work ethic, and I feel like I'm defined on my work ethic, and people can see my work and know that I did it, or hear my name and know the kind of work I'm going to do. And I love that for me. But I'm like, but when I get feedback, I'm like, they're not there to tear you down as a person. They're there to help you improve. So if you get a harsh piece of feedback, if you didn't get a project done, if you fell below expectations, something like that, separate the emotionality, cry for a day, and then come back tomorrow and say, how can I do that better next time? What did I miss? How can I improve? Use it as an after action. But you just have to separate the emotionality from it, which is so hard, but it's true. Like, your job is your job. Sign off at the end of the day and go be a person. Try not to take it with you. And in the tools I've used in my mindfulness journey to help me are 10% Happier, which is an app, 10 minutes of meditation a day. I read Stillness is the Key, which is a great book all about the tools to find inner peace and be able to basically sit in a room by yourself with your own thoughts. And a book called Unbothered, which is actually a journal and teaching yourself how to be unbothered by a lot of the things around you that would, like, God, that driver really pissed me off, or God, hitting every red light today. Just be unbothered by the things that roll your way as much as possible. possible. Anyway, those are our takeaways. Sorry for the long episode. We tried to keep this one short. It did not happen. We appreciate you spending your Friday with us. Please, if you liked the content today, let us know. If not, let us know. It's free engagement and I'll take it. Remember to like, share, or subscribe. It's absolutely free. It's the best way you can support us. Otherwise, we have some exciting in-person events coming soon to events that you know, like the WISES Annual Conference and RSA. So the Cyber Queen / Hacker in Heels, which Stacey and I make up both. We will be out there for you in person to interact with. And we wish you all the best of luck on your journey. And we'll see you back next week for more layoff advice with Mimi Gross. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.
See y'all.
I don't have my outro ready. Where is it?